Hi there, I'm Doireann Mc Dermott and you're watching Dukascopy's Targets in Focus. Well, this week we watched the Swedish krona fall to the lowest level in 1 year against its euro counterpart. I have Michael Sneyd, FX Strategist at BNP Paribas on the line. So Michael, what are your thoughts on its recent performance, and tell us what type of patterns are we currently witnessing with the Swedish krona ahead of Riksbank?
Yeah, we've seen the Swedish krona underperform this week, really against a backdrop where investors are kind of reevaluating the growth outlook for the rest of the year. With the Fed looking to taper and generally monetary conditions across the globe tightening, the Swedish krona has really been impacted. Sweden as an economy, it's a very trade-dependent economy, so the Swedish krona becomes almost a leverage trade on global trade and the global growth outlook. So it's really been this downward revision of growth expectations that's impacted the Swedish krona this week. Also, as you mentioned, very importantly, the Riksbank next week will be key for the Swedish krona. We already saw last week the Nordic Bank surprised the markets. There's scope for the Riksbank to do something similar. I mean, the growth numbers haven't been quite as strong out of Sweden, and it is likely that the Riksbank will maintain a dovish tone, but there does remain a risk that they could even take one step further and cut rates. That means investors are going to be very cautious about entering any Swedish positions ahead of the Riksbank. In terms of our view and our forecast over the months and year ahead, we look for the Swedish krona to generally remain weak against the euro. In fact, we're looking for the euro itself to also remain soft. So this is probably going to be keeping the euro-stocky pair quite range bound. So we're looking to trade around 880 flat for the next 12 months. I think where there's more opportunities in the Swedish krona is more against the US dollar and also against the Norwegian krona. So we're looking for the dollar stocky cross to rise up above 7 over the next 12 months. And NOK stocky in particular, we're looking for a rise to about 119. So that's a good 7 or 8% move from the current levels.
Now moving on to the Norwegian krone. At its last meeting, the Norges Bank kept its benchmark rate at 1.5% and predicted it would be 1.38% in the fourth quarter, in comparison to an earlier forecast of 1.45%. Now, why have they revised this figure, and what is your outlook for the NOK?
Well, the change that they made to their predictions for the repo rate were actually quite surprising. So far in June, ahead of the meeting, the economic data had been strong, and in particular, the inflation data out of Norway had been stronger than expected. So yeah, that really does lead to the question of why did they lower their forecast? And when you read the statement, it suggests that they're putting much more emphasis on the slowdown in global growth expectations and the potential impact that could have on the Norwegian economy, much more than the most recent data points or the most recent inflation number. So really it seems that the Norges Bank is being very cautious in its forward-looking assessment of the global economy, and it kept in that statement that there was scope for the Norges Bank to cut rates if they needed to. Now, in terms of the impact that had on NOK, we saw going into the Norges Bank that actually investors were holding quite a large size in long Norwegian krona positions, mainly on expectations that the Norges Bank would have to start indicating that it was going to be comfortable with raising its rates sometime over the next 6 to 9 months. So really the fact that they revised down the forecast came as a very big surprise and has led to the subsequent sell-off in the Norwegian krona. We, however, at BNP Paribas, we think that the sell-off in Norwegian krona has been a bit too aggressive. Earlier this week, we put on a short Euro-NOK trade recommendation. Really what we saw, particularly from our quant models, was that the price action in the Norwegian krona had overreacted to the Norges Bank statement. In particular, when you look at how the interest rate market has reacted, it's been much more muted and suggests that actually the Norwegian krona has scope to rebound. Now, we've seen the last couple of days that the Norwegian krona has retraced some of its sell-off. We think that this has further to go. Retail sales data today was very strong. Also, we had announcement from the Norges Bank that they're slowing the pace of Norwegian krona sales that they do as part of the oil fund operations. So we're very comfortable being positioned long Norwegian krona. In terms of forecast, we're looking over the next couple of weeks for euro NOK to move back down to 770. And then over a 12-month horizon, we think that Norwegian krona can remain a top performer, particularly amongst European currencies. We're looking for euro NOK to decline to 740. And as I mentioned, in terms of the NOK-STOCKY cross rate, we think there's a good opportunity there, playing divergences between Norway and Sweden. We're looking for NOK-STOCKY to rise up towards 119.
Michael, as always, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you today. Well, viewers, that is all for right now. But if you are interested in the performance of currency pairs, then make sure you look at Monday and Wednesday's targets and focus. But for now, have a great weekend.